y bienvenidas a Sex and Spanglish, where we empower mujeres to get in touch with their bodies, own their pleasure, and where we discuss all the cochinadas our abuelas didn't tell us about. Hi y'all, my name is Ana, sexpert, certified sex and life coach, proud Latina, and your go-to guide for all things sex. I'm here to help you get out of your head and into your body to have mind-blowing sex. Let's be real. La comunidad latina doesn't talk about sex. Pero qué suerte tienen because this Latina does. My vision is to have Latinas worldwide talking about sex just like we do with chisme. Join me every week to hear me discuss todas las cochinadas sin vergüenza. Hola mi gente, so today I'm going to be soltando toda la sopa on sexual responsibility and why this is vital to an enhanced sex life. So I'm going to start out by telling a story, and I've already told this on my social media platforms, so if you're in my Facebook group, Latina Cochinas, you might have already heard this, and if you're not in that group, you definitely need to head over and join that. Again, it's Latinas Cochinas. We're really creating a community over there where we can talk vulnerably and openly with other Latinas about sex and about all things. So, I also share this on my Instagram stories. By the time you hear this, it'll probably be like a week old, so it won't be on there anymore. But if you already heard that story, you're still going to want to listen in because there's definitely going to be some nuggets. It's definitely a story worth re-listening to. And if you haven't heard it, here it goes. So yesterday I was at my sister's house and I wanted to go to Walmart for a specific item. And if you're wondering what that item is, it was a Lazy Susan. If you don't know what that is, just Google it. I might even put it on my stories because I'm like obsessed with it. But anyways, so I wanted to go to Walmart to get a Lazy Susan. Now, this normally wouldn't be a problem, right? Just fucking go to Walmart and grab the Lazy Susan, right? Problem solved, supposedly. The problem was that I wanted to go to a specific Walmart because I knew that that Walmart had it. So entre my sister's house and my house, there's about 5 Walmarts that I can go to. And I had been to every single one of those Walmarts within the past like 2 weeks to get other things and also to look for this fucking Lazy Susan that I had or that I wanted, right? I already have one. I wanted one that matched and I looked online. I looked everywhere. They didn't have it. And I knew that if I just went to the store where I bought the first one, they would probably have it, right? So I wanted to go to this specific Walmart that was by the post office or UPS, whatever the fuck. They have mail. That's the point. So I wanted to go to this specific Walmart from my sister's house. Now, I know how to get to that Walmart, but I didn't know how to get there quickly, right? If I was going to do it my way, it would have taken probably like 45, maybe an hour to get there because I was going to take the long way. So I'm like, okay, let me put it in my GPS. It'll tell me a faster way to get there. Problem solved. So I thought. So I'm driving, I'm listening to the GPS, it's telling me where to go. I end up getting on the freeway. Now, I thought that was kind of weird to get on the freeway to get to the store that I wanted to go to, but I figured, you know what, not a big deal. The GPS knows what it's doing. So I get off the freeway on the exit that it tells me to get off on, and I realize that I'm in an entirely different town. Now, I knew what town I was in, wasn't a big deal. The problem was that the Walmart the GPS was taking me to was the Walmart in that specific town. And that's not the Walmart I wanted to go to. I wanted to go to the Walmart next to the post office. And that was in another town. So I had given my GPS directions, right, or an address, but it sent me there, but that wasn't where I wanted to go. So I had to put in a new address, and I finally made it to Walmart, the Walmart I wanted to go to, the specific Walmart I wanted to go to. I got the specific item I was looking for, and then I was able to go home. And you're probably thinking, like, what the fuck does this have to do with sex? And it does, because here's why. I am constantly telling my audience and my clients that they need to figure out what they want, what they don't want, and how to effectively communicate that with their partners. So, my story is the perfect example of how this plays out in real life. So, I knew what item I wanted. I knew what brand, I knew what it looked like. I knew the specific Lazy Susan that I wanted, like down to the very last detail, right? I knew how much it was going to cost. I knew what it looked like, all the things. I knew what I wanted. I knew what store I had to go to get that item. I knew that I couldn't go to the other 4 Walmarts that are over here. I had to go to a specific Walmart, the Walmart that was by the post office. I had to go to that Walmart to get what I wanted. I knew that going to the other Walmart, right, the Walmart that the GPS was taking me to originally, wasn't going to get me what I wanted, right? It was going to get me something that I didn't want. Now, the GPS is how to get there, right? It's giving you directions on how to get somewhere. And it's also filtering out other places, right, that you don't want to go to. But because I put in the wrong address, that was ineffective communication. Communication that's not effective. Effective communication is providing my GPS with an address, telling it exactly where I want to go. And, the results that I want, right? And so we think about this in our sex life. Knowing the item you want at that store is knowing what you want. Knowing the stores that don't have it is knowing what you don't want. Knowing the stores that do have it is knowing what you don't want, right? Because that automatically filters out all the other stores. If I know that I want to get, like Great Value brand of whatever, right? Walmart brand, if that's what we're talking about. I know that Target is not going to have it. I know that CVS is not going to have it, right? If I want a specific brand of something, I know where to get it. I'm not going to go to Walmart to get like Victoria's Secret panties, right? I'm not going to go to like Bath and Body Works to get Walmart, Great Value lotion or whatever, brand they sell at Walmart. And knowing how to get there is the effective communication, right? When I talk about communication with my clients, I always talk about before having that conversation, before even asking to have the conversation, you need to know what you want to get out of that conversation. And when I say that, I do not mean, oh, they're going to agree with me, right? That's not what I mean. What you want to get out of the conversation is what points that you want to touch on, what you want to get out of you, right? Because that's the only thing that you can control. Your goal in a conversation should never be to have someone agree with you. You want to get your points out and understood and heard. That is your goal of the conversation, whatever topic it is that you're talking about. So the effective communication is just that. And that's where the GPS comes in. So I hope my Walmart story helps you in thinking about the responsibility that you have of figuring out what you want, what you don't want, and how to effectively communicate that with the people that you're having sex with. And, this applies to non-sexual things as well, right? This can apply to conversations in other areas of your life with your family, your friends, your kids, like what have you. But definitely start out by figuring out what it is that you want. And don't just be like, oh, I want a better sex life. That's not specific enough. What do you want it to look like? What do you want it not to look like? What do you want more of? What do you want less of? How are you going to measure that? How are you going to know when you get to quote unquote better sex? What does that look like? Be specific. Because just like with the GPS, if you are trying to get somewhere and not giving it a specific address, it's just going to take you to like the vicinity, right? And it's not really going to be exactly where you want to go. So you need to decide first what it is that you want and what it is that you don't want. And if you need help with that, definitely send me a message via Instagram or Facebook at Sex and Spanglish. Reach out, ask me for help. I also have the sexual story workshop that is completely free. You can download that. The link is in the show notes of both this YouTube video and the podcast, however you're listening. So definitely be sure to check that out. It's completely free, and that will definitely give you more guidance on how to figure out what it is that you want and what you don't want. So going back to responsibility. We talked about taking responsibility for what you want and what you don't want, taking responsibility for how you communicate that, and effective communication. We are responsible for a lot of things, but we don't like to take responsibility. It's much easier, and I'm guilty of this as well, to blame it on other people. But if we're not taking responsibility, then that means we have a lot less control than we actually do. So you are responsible for figuring out what you want, what you don't want, for communicating effectively, and you're also responsible for your own pleasure. And I know that this is like an unpopular opinion. We like to say like, oh, well, like my man doesn't make me come, or he comes too quickly, or he doesn't like foreplay, this, that, and the other. I can't find someone that like knows what they're doing in bed, right? But we are responsible for our own pleasure. And the reason for that is no one else can make us feel pleasure but ourselves. And I know that sounds weird because you're like, okay, well, I have sex with other people. Like, how does that come into play? But pleasure, while we can feel pleasure like tactily, right? Like with hands and things like that, we feel the emotion of pleasure from what we were thinking about the experience. And we know that because we can feel pleasure in non-sexual ways as well. And it is never what is going on around us that is creating pleasure. It is our thoughts about it. So just like an extrovert can go to a party and think like, this is the greatest thing on earth, I'm loving this, and feel the feelings of pleasure. An introvert, or someone that maybe doesn't like those people, can go and think, this is fucking stupid. Why are we here? When can we go home? Why did I agree to come? And feel feelings that of maybe like discomfort or something that's not pleasurable. So our thoughts are actually what's creating the feelings of pleasure. And so it's really important to understand that, because when you truly take that in and believe that your pleasure comes from you and only from you, it's so much more freeing, because then you're taking the pressure off of everybody else and you're just focusing on your own pleasure, and you're able to feel that as much or as little as you want. No one can take it away if it is your responsibility. So while at first it might seem like, oh, I don't want to take responsibility of my pleasure, I just want someone to please me, really, it's a lot more freeing to have that responsibility, because then no one can take it away. If someone else is the only way that you get pleasure, they get to decide when you do. So just something to think about. And how this plays into like a specific example, I wanted to share. So over the weekend, I went to a car show with my boyfriend, and I'd never been to a car show. Doesn't really interest me. I couldn't care less about it, but I agreed to go. There was food, there was alcohol. I was like, all right, cool. And I've never been, right? So maybe I was going to like it. I don't know. Honestly, no me interesa. Like, at all, but that's fine. Whatever. It was all right. So for the past, I would say 2 weeks, my boyfriend's been in this like rigorous training program for work. So he's been super tired, right? Like physically exhausted, also kind of mentally exhausted because it's a lot of tests and things in addition to that, right? So because of that, we haven't been having sex as much as I would like or as much as we used to, right? Or we usually do. So, of course, I made that mean that like he didn't care, and I was like, this is gonna last for how long? Like the school is like 90 days or something like that. So I'm like, this is horrible. And I was thinking like all the worst things in the world. Like, this is ridiculous, right? I was getting so upset. And after the car show, I realized I wasn't taking responsibility. I wasn't taking responsibility for my attitude and how I showed up. I wasn't taking responsibility for neglecting certain household duties that we have like an agreement, right? So we agree that I wash the laundry because I hate how he washes it. He can wash laundry, perfectly fine, but I agreed to wash the laundry. So I need to hold up my end, right, of, the bargain or whatever you want to call it. I didn't take responsibility for neglecting the laundry, which meant that he in turn had to wash his own laundry. And then he was even more tired and more exhausted, and he was probably irritated. And then so we didn't end up having sex. I didn't take responsibility for how I showed up when I was initiating sex. So yes, I did initiate sex. So that was great. But how I was showing up was horrible. Like, I was showing up with the thought like, oh, he's probably going to say no, but I'm going to do it anyway. Right? And that didn't make me feel good at all. And so then when he said no, I was just confirming my thought like, oh, he's going to say no anyway. So even though I was initiating, it wasn't getting us anywhere. So I needed to take responsibility for not necessarily how I asked, but how I showed up, like with what energy, right? Like maybe curiosity versus like, I don't know, dread, right? Of asking because I thought he was going to say no. And then I also wasn't taking responsibility for how I was showing up in general, right? Like, what was I doing differently? And I was, so focused on him and not initiating sex and saying no to my initiations. Like, how was I showing up differently that was making it hard for him to say no? And I want to point out that this isn't about manipulation, right? Because I could show up in the best way possible and he could say no still. That is entirely up to him. That is his, agenda, right? That's not the point. The point is to show up in the way that you want to show up in your relationship. How do you want to show up? And show up in that way regardless of what the other person does in response to that. And if he decided that he still didn't want to have sex after that, then I would have to figure it out, right? I could decide. For some people, that might mean, making a change in the relationship, right? Maybe you're going to have an open relationship. Maybe you're going to leave the relationship, right? You get to decide all of those things. But first, you need to fix how you're showing up in that relationship. So our relationship is totally fine, right? It's fine and dandy. This was just like a little blip and really showing like, oh, something's changed. And I get it, right? He's tired, all those things. But I also wasn't showing up in the way that I normally show up. And so really changing how I showed up made it a lot easier for him to say yes to my initiations. Now, are we still having it as much as I would like to? No, but he's also exhausted. Just like if I were coming back, I don't know, like recovering from an illness or maybe like having a baby or something, like he wouldn't expect me to like be having sex all the time, right? Or like a huge life change, whatever that is, right? And so there are seasons in your life where you're not going to have sex as much, and that's totally fine. But the important thing is to notice how you are showing up and how that impacts where you're putting sex on the priority list. So, what can you take responsibility for today, this week, this month? Think about it and let me know. Message me on Instagram at Sex and Spanglish. Comment below this video. Message me on Facebook at Sex and Spanglish. Again, if you haven't done so yet, you're going to want to join my Facebook group, Latinas Cochinas, on Facebook. We're diving into all things sex. Video lessons are posted weekly. And we're just creating like a huge familia de Latinas talking about sex and all things life. Talk to you soon. If you'd like a question answered on the podcast, send me an email at sexandspanglish@gmail.com. That's sexinspanglish@gmail.com. If you like what you heard today and are interested in getting a personalized pleasure plan, head to the show notes and to get access to my calendar. You'll pay $69 for 69 minutes of life-changing information. Ya tú sabes, the shit that will make your abuela say, "Ay, hija, de eso no se habla." As a Latina sexpert and certified sex and life coach, I help you navigate your culture and your sexuality sin vergüenza. You won't find this anywhere else. Join me every week to hear me talk about orgasms, STIs, birth control, and all the other cochinadas your abuelas didn't tell you about. But that's not all. We'll also discuss machismo, la tía metiche, and sexual stories from other Latinas just like you. Be sure to follow me on Instagram and Facebook at Sex in Spanglish and send me a DM or leave me a comment letting me know you heard this. And be sure to join my Facebook community, Latinas Cochinas. Espero verte pronto.